Here we go. You know what's going down, right? Like that. Yeah.
Thank you very much for joining us today. Just a little bit about myself. I previously worked at AEG Presents, Golden Voice, and Bowery Presents for 11 years prior to starting Gravity Productions. I work as a festival director and event producer. Currently, I'm the festival director for the shows Day in Vegas in Las Vegas and Second Sky in Oakland, California, which just happened 2 weeks ago. I'd like to turn it over to Katelyn Scott to give herself a little bit of an introduction.
Hey everybody, I'm Katelyn Scott. I am currently a senior event producer at AEG Presents and Winter Circle Productions, local to New Orleans, and I am the festival director for Buku in New Orleans and Hangout in Gulf Shores, Alabama. And I'll pass it to Sampo.
Hey there, everyone. I'm Michael Sampliner, but known as Sampo, and I am also with AEG Presents and Madison House Productions and Presents, and I'm the festival director of the Electric Forest Festival and the Lost Lands Festival, which we just finished and got out of the mud of. And I'll pass on to Jocelyn.
All right. So, hey, everyone. My name is Jocelyn. I work for an organization called A Greener Festival, and I'm the North America lead for that. For those who haven't heard of us before, AGF is a nonprofit based in the UK, but we operate all across the world. And our mission is dedicated specifically to improving the sustainability performance of live events and all of its contributors. So I personally manage the awards we have in North America.
Awesome. So today we're going to discuss some industry trends, and it's a very exciting time in the festival industry just to be back into the swing of things. I think, Sampo and myself, who've just come off of events, it's been a little bit of a wild, crazy time getting back into it, but it's really exciting to be back with our teams out in the field and seeing some of our, friends and family that we've missed for the past 18 months or so. So with that in mind, and let's say with all of the pandemic challenges notwithstanding, Katelyn, why don't you kick us off with some of the what would you say is the biggest challenge in producing a music festival?
Ooh, starting with a heavy question. Biggest challenge. I think every festival can and probably will at some point present its own unique challenge. Like with COVID aside, I mean, we're just in New Orleans right now, just got hit by a hurricane. So we're switching venues on the fly. And so there's a lot of challenges, but I think the biggest thing is just kind of being on your feet. I think weather is always a curveball. As Sampo just mentioned, the mud, and I'd love to hear about that at Lost Lands a bit too. But yeah, it's just kind of, I don't know, keeping yourself open to really any challenge that could get thrown your way. In the Gulf Shores area, it's typically weather. But yeah.
So, transitioning out of that, and, it's an interesting thing, especially I would say in the United States, so many different locales that we have here. I always joke with my friends that I produce festivals with on the West Coast that they've got it so easy because you're not dealing with as many variables in terms of the weather that you've got all the time on the East Coast. Sampo, can you help our audience understand the main components in going into producing a music festival with some of the challenges that Katelyn's mentioned in mind?
Yeah, I mean, I think that at a very, very high level, that the difference between, for me at least, for indoor shows or arena shows versus music festival is that you kind of can wing some arena shows. You can kind of get away with doing it at the last second and pulling things off. But I feel with the festival, because, as Kate says, there's so many unknown variables that you have to go into the festival incredibly dialed in with all your systems and all your teams and all your everything, because at some point something's going to go sideways, and you have to be able to have all your resources ready to react to that and not just reacting to the normal course of business day to day. So I feel that when we start planning for a festival, which we do now pretty much 365 days a year for these bigger festivals, that you're really trying to get down what you would consider the basic level of how we're building the show, what is the exact production schedule, the exact load and schedule, the exact pieces of all that, so that you have that plan in place, knowing that it's going to go completely sideways somewhere. Some vendor's going to fail, some storm's going to hit, something's going to happen. And then you have the kind of, I think, executive or organizational resources available to kind of react to that. And you're not spending your time chasing down your fencing vendor because they've got that together. And then you can actually have the time to react to these kind of circumstances. So I feel like when we go on site, we end up becoming kind of, emergency room doctors, or, we're just waiting for the emergency to happen, standing by, and it's kind of boring. Then all of a sudden everything hits the fan and you are just, don't sleep for the next 3 days to try to fix it. And I think that's kind of, to me, that kind of key element of it is to have it so dialed in that when you get there, you're able to react to the inevitable failure that's going to happen somewhere on site. Is that too dark and depressing to say that?
No, and you're so spot on. Anyone that does what we do can totally relate to the emergency room doctor concept for sure. Jocelyn, you come to this from a little bit of a different side of things than Katelyn, Sampo, and I do. Why don't you give your perspective on the approach from your side in terms of what goes into it? In your experience working with the Greener Festival and as being, not necessarily the producer of the event, but part of the team that's helping put it on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I definitely come from a very different perspective. I'm not a producer. I'm someone who kind of evaluates like the environmental performance of these large events that we put together, right? So from a sustainability and environmental standpoint, I think one of the biggest challenges we have to think about is like having this top-down leadership of saying, hey, sustainability is part of our own mission, it's part of our core operating guidelines. And that really kind of helps set the tone of what each component of the festival comes out to be, right? So if an organizer has a very strong message in their environmental commitments, then that message resonates with people who are working with food and beverages, or the people who are controlling power, people who are removing waste, the attendees, the artists. And having that kind of commitment it sounds easy to make, but it's not always easy to execute. So I think that's something we commonly see, not just in live events, but also other industries across the board.
Totally true. And, one thing I want to mention to everybody here, we have a Q&A tab over in the chat on the right-hand side of your screen, so you can toggle between the chat and the Q&A. If you've got any questions for some of the folks that are watching in here, please fill it in that Q&A area, and we'll circle back and take a look at that once we get through this portion of the discussion. Jocelyn, show me your water bottle. What kind of stickers you got on there? What do you got?
It's a mismatch of REI, rock climbing. There's a part of a Coachella sticker.
I was going to say, that's what caught my eye.
And some national park stickers.
Awesome. Love it. So, for people talk about how in our industry, it's sometimes very difficult to go to school to learn what it is that we do. As far as I know, you can go to the Top Sail and maybe learn to be an audio engineer. You can go to, I see some people in here that are from a couple of different programs, UC Riverside, maybe USC, some places that do have music business programs. Very few of the programs that are out there that relate to music have much to do with the live side of the business. I think that's changing and is going to, change with a bunch of different programs that I've seen start to pop up in the past couple of years. But I guess, Katelyn, why don't you give us a little bit of your background of, how you started and how you got here? I mean, I know a little bit of your story at Northeastern, but give us a little bit more. And then Sampo and Jocelyn, I'd love to hear from you guys about this too.
Yeah, great. I went to Northeastern University and studied music business, primarily the business side of it. And like Kyle said, there's not a lot of schools that really have those programs. Looking back, I don't know if I necessarily needed that specific program. I think it was more of the business side of it, communications, that really helped me in the long run. I will say that it definitely, with Northeastern, there's a co-op. So it's basically an extended internship program that they allow you to do. And so that was really the biggest asset, that I was able to take that time off to be able to get a paid job in the industry. My real start of the industry, though, was just working any odd job I could possibly get, whether that be food vending concessions. That was my first gig ever at Bonnaroo, and Superfly gave me a chance there, or actually it was Googa Mooga in New York with them. And then from there, I kind of just hopped around from different departments. Every department is so intertwined. When I was working on concessions, I got to know the sponsorship team, which then you get to know the art and decor team, and you get to know the artist teams. And so I really worked on almost every department as a freelancer to begin with at the end of my college career, and then the year or two after, which then I just made the connections because I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. And that was kind of the best place to get a taste of everything and kind of just absorb it. And what I personally realized I liked doing was the macro management of it, knowing the devil of the details, but knowing how everything worked together. And that's kind of when I just started to seek out more of that festival director role that is looking at all the departments at once. And so from freelance, went to Superfly for about 4 or 5 years, worked on the sponsorship team there and as an event producer, and then came to New Orleans with AEG Presents when that opportunity arose, and just going after every opportunity you possibly can. It's got me where I am today.
I'll jump in because I'll 100% agree with Katelyn on that. I mean, I think that that getting your hands dirty is the most important thing. I graduated with a philosophy degree from Yale University, which I've incredibly applied working with 9 Inch Nails and Stone Temple Pilots and people like that. Really, really applied my It had nothing to do with that. It had to do with a desire to get in and get your hands dirty. And I think that even today, at the size of our shows, that it's very easy to see someone in decor or someone on the artist hospitality or someone on the sponsorship team who's out there busting their ass, and is when things start going sideways, that they're the ones out there working the late hours with you and kind of all hands on deck attitude. And those people get grabbed to do the next bigger job because that's who you want on your team. And you're continually trying to build great teams. And, the person who's able to work with you and work hard and kind of drop the ego and get at it is, I think, always super valued. And so I'm sure Kyle does too. I'm sure Katelyn does too. I still move bike rack and set up barricade and do whatever I have to do because at 2 p.m. the gates open and the kids are coming in. So, that show needs to be ready, and that doesn't matter what position you're in. You need to get at it. And I think that's where I think we all look for those people. So I don't think it's that ultimately that hard to find, because they really stand out especially on a festival ground, the people that are there to really learn and do anything and take on any task, just like Katelyn was saying.
Yeah, I totally agree with you too. So, I love going to music festivals, but never expected myself to work in this space. I went to school knowing that I wanted to work in environmental sustainability. So I went to undergrad and graduate school with environmental sciences and sustainability management. And I really spent the last 10 years trying to figure out what space did I want to work in, right? And it was a lot of getting my hands dirty of different industries. It was interning in audit and places. And it was kind of gathering this skill set that I didn't know if it would be helpful in the long run, but actually turned out to be really good and beneficial for me. As an example, I interned at the Department of Veteran Affairs one summer, which was totally random, nothing to do with environmental science. But honestly, that internship actually opened up so many more doors to me for me than I actually expected. So I kind of landed in this space because in graduate school, I took a journalism class because I wanted to get better in writing. And I decided to write a paper on sustainability in music festivals. And I was just chit-chatting with people. This is how I met the team at A Greener Festival. I met some other organizers in New York City, which is where I live. and all talking about this topic. And what an unexpected experience where writing a paper for school led me to work with a Greener Festival. It's kind of surreal to think about it that way. But I think, as students, people are a lot more open and receptive in sharing their experiences with you. They want to see you succeed. They want to help you. They want to help you build these connections. So I think when you're young, you have to appreciate the hustle in building that network and speaking to more people. And I think you'll get a lot more out of it than you really think at the end.
That's awesome. I totally totally agree. I mean, coming from my side of life, ooh, that's loud. Hold on a second. Sorry about that. In my career, just a little bit about my background. When I went to school, and like Sampo, I was a humanities major at Providence College, not quite up with the Yaleys. Great to see though that you didn't come from the School of Drama though, Sampo. It's like, that's right, philosophy majors, my favorite people. Love a philosophy major, always, every single one of them. I started booking shows when I was in school. Every single school has got a student activities committee or something that is named slightly different, but each one of those schools is going to have a spend that you can work with on campus to understand how to bring activities onto your college campus, your university's campus. It's a great way to understand what goes into actually putting on an event. As much as what we do is about music, it's also mostly about gathering people. And I think that's a key thing for anyone who's interested in getting involved in the festival industry. Is it's as much about creating an environment and an atmosphere and even a small city as it is about the music itself. The music just makes everything so much better. I think one key thing that I've heard everybody talk about as we've kind of gone through this question is the idea of getting in there and hustling and starting. What we do is not easy. I have worked in management. I have worked as a talent buyer. I have worked in flipping grilled cheeses at a stand at a music festival, just like Katelyn did. Worked in security, worked at did I say record label? I don't know if I did. The reward that you receive from putting on an incredible event that has 60,000 people with their arms in the air is like no other reward that I've received in my life. I get chills just thinking about it, but there's no question in my mind that the challenges of trying to keep everybody safe, trying to make sure that everybody's having a great time, and always knowing that regardless of how much the planning has been successful, that there's always going to be something that needs attention at every moment of the event, and sometimes a little bit more urgently than others. Those of you that are interested in being involved in on the festival side of things, know that we are more eager right now in our industry than ever before in getting people that are eager to want to join our teams, join our family. We are every event is looking for hardworking talent, people that are interested in really getting their hands dirty, moving that bike rack, like Sampo said. Everybody's looking for people that are eager to get involved. So this is a really great time to want to break into the festival industry. But kind of keep moving along here. Switching over more towards the way that things have changed during the pandemic, as we see a pivot in technology, more live streams that are popping up during the COVID era. Katelyn, how do you see technology in the past, let's call it 2 years, given everything that's kind of gone on with the pandemic, impacting our industry, and where do you see it moving forward from here?
Well, technology's always been kind of creeping behind us, right? We do live experiences, so often people don't, other than the stage tech, where else does that come in? I think streaming festivals has been a huge thing for a while now. Large partners coming in and streaming from all different types of partners. I remember the first streaming partner I ever worked with was Xbox randomly. And so it allows the festival to reach beyond the festival grounds. I wholeheartedly hope there will always be that physical experience. That is what I am the most excited about, and have always been. So paired with the technology, I think that there will always be both, and it's ways to really, the world is kind of our oyster with how we integrated it on the ground, because everything's changing every day. And I always think there will be a level of streaming that just helps, get music out there to different people that can't come to a show. You really do reach so many more people by allowing either your festival to stream or just having standalone streaming events. So I think we'll definitely see that keep going, as well as pick up, especially over the last 2 years, since people have needed to rely on that. I don't see that going away anytime soon. But my heart will always be in the physical, in front of you experience. So I definitely think that both will continue to exist.
I would love to emphasize one thing that Katelyn just mentioned. So having virtual live streams, right? And it's about accessibility. And part of that is also equity, right? Now you're letting other people who may not be able to travel as far or be able to, let's say, afford a ticket, enjoy part of that experience as well. And I think that's a really important component, because this is, here in the live and music industry, it's about building a community. And now we're just adding on to a virtual community on top of that.
Awesome. Sampo, what do you think are the top skills that are necessary in someone who's looking to produce a music festival?
That's a good question. I think there's a really, when you get to the producing side of it, that you have to have enough knowledge of each of the areas at the festival that you understand each of the areas. You do not have to be an expert in any of them. I'm certainly a testament of that. But you do have to be able to stick your foot in far enough in each of those areas. So you have to understand enough about sound, stage, and lights to understand how their project and their build and their system is going to work as it coordinates with your site ops team or your build team. And so I think it's this kind of a jack of all trades, and you don't have to be the master, but really it is that. And then an ability to keep, I think we all know this, ability to keep about 100 balls in the air without it panicking you. And so you have to be pretty comfortable with the unknown and things fluctuating. If you expect it to go in an orderly fashion, this is a really bad place to be. If you're really happy throwing a lot of balls in the air, knowing enough about each so that you can push them forward, you're not the expert at it. I can't tell you the difference between two different of the new lighting fixtures, which one's the better one for certain looks. I certainly know how to hang lights and what it takes and how many bodies it takes to get that up, though. And that helps me enough to move that along. So I think it's that ability to, and I think that goes back to actually kind of getting your hands dirty, that idea that you have to have tasted all those things to have some knowledge of them. And then at the point that you can then start coordinating those pieces without panic, right? And I think we've all been in situations where the producer or a producer or someone in charge of an area panics and hits that button, and it really grounds everything to a halt. And so I think that, Kyle, I know that, that's one of your great skills too, which is just to sit in the middle of the storm and not panic, but able to actually watch it happen and help people out of their kind of tailspins as they go. So it's this very kind of, somewhat withdrawn ability to not get into the panic, but have enough knowledge to know how to pull everyone out of it. That makes sense.
Yeah. And I think that's the inverse of that is really interesting as to what we're describing of how we all kind of learned about the industry too, right? It's you're kind of looking at this parabola of starting where you don't really have any knowledge. So let me go learn as much as I can, into coming to a scenario where now I've got a little bit of information about a lot of different things, which allows me as an asset to be a producer. And then on the flip side, now once I've reached that position, now I have the ability to opine or to hire to help find the right resources that exist all the way up and down the roster in order to get this crazy thing that we do done. I mean, I don't know, a lot of people realize, the amount of time that we have sometimes to build these events is sometimes days. You know, we're lucky if we've got a couple weeks to build these events, and there's a lot of moving parts and a lot of people that are involved, and so it's always interesting. Katelyn, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, the one thing, I mean, I agree with everything you both said. The other thing I'll say is a key component that I've found that I've looked for when I hire as well as in myself is being good at communication. And so whether you're the producer, festival director, or department head, you would get so much information that's flooded to you that may change. And so you need to be able to disseminate that information to your team, or there's no use of that information. Like Jocelyn, you were saying, there's so many factors for sustainability, but if people don't know what sustainability measures we're doing, then it falls apart, the execution side of it. So there's all these closed door meetings that then that info gets disseminated, but it doesn't just stop with that one email. You really need to communicate to your team, whether that's when you can check in to get your credential, whether it's what you're composting, whether it's COVID compliance stuff, just across the board, that things shift so much, like Sampo said, that you really need to be great at communicating as well as absorbing that information as it comes to you on the fly.
I want to go back to the technology question, because I think one of the great parts of some of these music festivals, like Electric Forest or like Buku, where it's located, is that when all the fans arrive, the technology absolutely shits the bed, and the cell phones don't work and nothing works, and it actually makes you be part of the experience. Like, I love that actually we're in places where the technology really, you can't do your normal technology and it fails. You can't shoot a 30-second video and send it to all your friends every second of the day. And so some of the kind of pieces of music festivals, as opposed to being or the more out, the ones that aren't in downtown areas and stuff like that, is that you actually are remote, and then you actually do kind of overtake or overwhelm the technology systems of cell phone networks and all that. And then you're forced to kind of, I don't know, partake in a different way, which I think is awesome.
Yeah, I think I would love to add that, one thing why sustainability is so interesting in this space is that when you go to a large festival, right, people go there being open to a new experience. They want to be exposed to something new or something they haven't thought of. And they're more receptive to learning these principles of giving back to the earth as we're here living in it. So I think that's a really nice narrative that's pretty unique to the live events industry, and it's something that carries really well.
Kyle, did you have any questions before we jump into our student-led questions?
Yeah, one quick one. I really liked on this sample here. What is your favorite festival moment? I'd love to ask that real quick for everybody before we hop into the student questions. Jocelyn, why don't you start?
Sure. So one of my favorite moments was in Lightning in a Bottle in California, Southern California. And it's in the San Antonio Rec Center. And there's like this beautiful hill that oversees this valley. And every night when the sun is setting, everyone just goes sits on the hill and they're just like cheering for the sun. They're like, "You go, sun, you're doing great." And it's like the best experience because you have all these kids running around doing that. All the attendees are there also doing that. And you're just kind of like celebrating the sun, as hippie as that can get.
Sampo, Katelyn.
I'll tell you mine, which is on a Monday morning after Electric Forest and not having slept for a week and a half at that point, and being completely shattered, and pretty hard space to be in after the festival's over, and driving my cart across the field. There was a woman walking there, and she looked so down, like I thought she was sick, and we're gonna have to get her to medical or something like that. And I pull up, I'm like, "Are you okay? You okay?" She's like, "I don't know." And she's really down. I'm like, "Do you need a ride somewhere? Do I need to get you to medical? Can I help you out at all?" She's like, "Oh, no, I'm just so sad that it's over." And like that moment made my entire month worth it. Just like that, as you said, Kyle, that you get to create these things that are just so inspirational and so transformative for people, and that someone would just be so devastated that it was over. It was really one of those moments that you made it all worthwhile.
Let's see. It's hard to pick an exact one, but I think every show, it's easy to get caught up in the office and working nonstop, but every show I try to go out into the crowd and just see everybody just thoroughly enjoying it. And there's just kind of in the back of the crowd a little bit, everyone's just dancing and, you know, being their weirdest, most genuine, amazing self. And just to take a moment with that, standing at the way back of the crowd and kind of watching all the hard work come together is always something that I try to do at least once a show, and that's by far my favorite part.
Thank you guys for sharing that. So let's get into student questions. So Harris M actually had a good question. Could one of you guys give us like a fun allocation breakdown? So like percentages of production, artists, marketing, everything that goes into that, the breakdown of a festival?
That's a good one, Harris. You're paying attention. That is a key question for sure. You know, I think we probably would all agree that it's different. It depends on what the show is. You know, you have some shows that have a lot of really pop or headline, really high demand talent, that the talent budget is going to be much more significant than the operations or the festival budget. It depends on what market you're in terms of the marketing expenses. Things have changed really dramatically in my career between the amount of money that's required to market a show. Now with what we've got with artists' ability to really push out on social media the places that they're going to be playing. And hopefully they do that. You know, sometimes it's hard to get artists. You'll see in a lot of contracts nowadays, it's required that artists post on social if they're playing a festival. That wasn't the case 5 years ago. I'm not spitting out numbers. Sampo, what do you got?
I was just going to add that that it is one of the nice parts of the festival industry is that it's your festival. It's not the act's tour. And so you do have a little bit more control over your budgets and what you are providing in terms of all those pieces, because you're inviting them to your show. You're not just producing their show. And so you can have a little bit more of that. How much are we going to spend on talent this year? How big is our production going to be? How many extra this and extra that's and all that stuff that you do? You can control that as the, you know, festival producers, because you're ultimately inviting both the talent and the fans to your show. And so again, the difference on touring, where it's the Rolling Stones tour, they're telling you how much it is, and that's what it is. You don't have a choice in that. So I think that at least you get some budgets, you know, whatever ability to determine that you don't get in other spheres of our industry.
Perfect. Thank you. Shifting gears a little bit, Nicole wants to know, how can someone build experience working with festival sustainability without having a background in environmental science?
That's a great question. You know, I think it's a little bit uncommon for someone to go to school for sustainability and environmental science. That's been relatively new, I would say, in like the last 10 years or so. There are many different ways to get involved. For one, it's a lot more common to work in a specific operation. So let's say if you work in lighting or site ops, right? And you apply that kind of mentality of sustainability in that existing role. That's something that's a bit more common versus having that technical background off the get-go. But that being said, there are also so many different nonprofits you can work out there that do a lot of educational engagement about this topic exactly, right? They want students to get involved. They recognize that you guys are the future of what this industry could be. So, I mean, I'll do a plug for AGF. You know, they do this sort of training with students on this topic, and they'll send students out to different festivals around the world assessing their environmental performance. And that's really just a way of getting exposure to that type of world and getting some more hands-on experience. So I think there's a lot of different avenues, especially for students. Why don't you use that topic into some of your coursework and use that as an opportunity to do some more research?
That's perfect. Thank you so much for answering that. It looks like Cassidy says, aside from working in venues and volunteering for festivals, how can we get involved in the festival industry?
I'll start with that one. So I know a big push that we're doing for Buku at least is posting jobs. We're trying to make jobs accessible. So I would start, there's years, no jobs really at festivals were around other than volunteering or internships. So it was really hard to kind of find that in. I know AEG as a whole, and I'm sure many others are really pushing to make jobs accessible. So start looking online for seeing what those are. I know Buku and Hangout Festival, if you're in the Gulf Shores area, we're going to be posting several jobs the next coming months. And once you get your foot in the door, I would just say, introduce yourself to everybody. Even if you are at a venue, ask what's the next gig that you guys need help at. And just really, once you get your foot in the door, continuing to introduce yourself to everybody and never leave a gig without having a connection for your next one.
Thank you, Katelyn. So Camilla said, I started to work as a backstage assistant 4 years ago and I fell in love. Nowadays, I want more opportunities, but it's really hard and sometimes get a bit discouraged. Do you guys have any advice on anything that Camilla could do to move forward and advance her career?
I mean, I think right now it's an amazing time. I would be super excited to be a student right now trying to get into this industry, because over the last year and a half, we've shed a tremendous amount of people that used to work in our industry. And it's the greenest, so to speak, I think it's ever been in terms of brand new faces coming in. And so I think it's really very wide open. And if you're a backstage, interested in the backstage area, there's all the kind of artist related positions at festivals that are always hiring quite large groups, artist hospitality, artist transportation, any kind of decor or anything of those natures, and artist relations as well. And they're all hiring, pretty big groups of people for the shows. And I would try to get in touch directly with those department heads at any festival that's in your area, and just reach out and know that you're available. I think, we just came out of Lost Lands in Ohio, and we were scrambling to fill all of our positions in every department. So I think that the opportunities are there, and it's really a matter of getting yourself to know who the lead is in that department and getting directly in touch with them. I don't know if you guys, Kyle and Katelyn, agree.
Yeah, and I think that there is on a lot of festival websites, you'll find a info at, right, email address, and I would just email them directly, say, this is the experience that I have, and I'd love to be part of your team. The backstage areas can be a little bit sensitive in terms of the people that are hired for these positions, because sometimes there are issues with people who are there for not necessarily the right reasons. And I think all of us that are in the producer department head positions are always try to be a little bit sensitive about making sure that people understand the etiquette of what's expected when they're working backstage. So you want to make sure that you understand the environment that you're in and you're there to work and to be professional. But we are, as Sampo mentioned, it's every event right now is looking for help. People that are eager, that want to hop in, that want to help and get their hands dirty. I completely agree.
I'll also add, just start digging and find where those people are at. Go to panels like this, reach out, go through LinkedIn. There's so many tools online where you can really dig and find who is involved. And I'll also say, look at the vendors. Look who supplies the sound for different festivals. Look who does the stages. Across the board, we hire so many vendors that then hire so many people. So that's another really great avenue to get in on site.
Those are great. Mateo wants to know, how did you all accumulate the skills over time that it takes to handle time-sensitive stress, things going wrong, and still being a pleasure to work with? So great customer service all around.
Moved a lot of bike rack.
There you go. I would say two key things. One, nobody wants to work with any jerks. Don't be a jerk. Okay? There's no saving lives, hopefully, knock on wood, happening at our events for the most part. So understand the environment that you're in And always remember that things, I mean, the switch that flipped for me when I was doing this was one day I had advanced the show perfectly. Advance is the planning that goes ahead of time in terms of getting it done. This wasn't a festival. It was a show at the Apollo Theater. But I had nailed it. I had everything timed out perfectly. I knew everything was going to be perfect. And then, of course, the artist got there and said, I want to change things up and do something different. And I kind of shrugged and said, I can never get it perfect. And then I realized that this is what we do. This is the nature of our job, is to deal with things that are going to be changing on the fly all the time. And if you can smile, have a good attitude about the fact that you know that things are going to change, and you got to be part of solving the issues that come up, but try not to get yourself too stressed out, because everyone is there both in front of the stage, on stage, and behind the stage to have a good time.
And I'll also add to it, and Kyle, you mentioned it earlier, which is this kind of family aspect. And I think that music festivals in our industry right now are the most family. Like, you really bond together to create and pull this thing off. And so you do get to lean on your brothers and sisters, and you get to really be this kind of united family there. I mean, it like no other place, I think, like no other thing that I've ever experienced. And that is, that makes it that much easier, or that much less stressful, or that much easier to kind of get through the really hard parts, because you are with your brothers and sisters all fighting together. And that's, at the end of the day, that makes it super rewarding and super fun, and a really tight network of people working together.
Yeah, it's all about teamwork. I mean, the long hours too, people kind of hit a level of like loopiness, right? Where it's like, all right, all hands on deck, whatever it takes. And the people that work festivals over and over tend to be the ones that can handle those situations and are kind of all in it. Because if you work one and you don't like it and you're really stressed out, likely you won't want to work another. Work on site. So you see a lot of reoccurring people, and you really just get to know everyone really well. So pull from the teammates around you and kind of use that group positivity to keep you going.
Absolutely. I think we all have very similar thoughts of, being someone who is pleasant to work with, who will accept challenges with a smile, be a friendly face on the team. That really goes a long way, especially when it's an industry that's very, very fast paced. Right? You don't want to be the person where people will say, hey, you're the one with the sour face all the time, and I don't really want to approach you. That's not kind of the way to go with all of this. So if you're always a friendly face, being open to challenges, and also if you're feeling really stressed and overwhelmed, also being honest about that and saying, hey, I need to figure out what my priorities are because I feel like things are so overwhelming. What do you think? Right? It's also okay to kind of ask for help when you really need to, and there's no shame in doing that.
Awesome. To close this out, Fiona has a question. What is your best piece of advice? You can just give one piece of advice in general that you have for these young professionals, or if you want to just give some tips on networking so they can stay connected.
I'd say introduce yourself to everybody, to the security person working the door, to the person picking up the trash. Like, introduce yourself to everyone. No one's better than anybody else on site. Everybody is such an integral part, and you have no idea who the person next to you is. So my main piece of advice is just introduce yourself to everyone and offer to lend a helping hand if you see someone struggling, like moving bike rack. The amount of times that always seems to be the last thing before gates, and the amount of times everyone is just all hands on deck. Doesn't matter what department you're in. Just be part of that group, to be all hands on deck and be down to roll up your sleeves.
I'd say drink the magic Kool-Aid that music is the greatest force in the universe. And if you believe that, then all your jobs will be easy and enjoyable. Just believe it. It's so, it's so spectacular what it can do and what it does. And so to be a part of that is, a gift for all of us. And so I think if you believe it, if you come at it from the love of music, everything else is kind of joy and fun and gravy.
And I'll just add to everybody to say that to be curious, right? Being curious about how everything works is how you'll really get your foot in. Ask questions, ask who else you can speak to, and just kind of have fun with it. I honestly think most of us are here because we enjoy doing this sort of work, and it's our curiosity who led us to where we are.
Great. Kyle, did you have any final remarks before we close out?
Sure. I mean, what we do is essentially project management, right? In terms of networking advice, make sure that you know how to use spreadsheets. We use spreadsheets for everything. Biggest piece of advice I could have, not for networking, but just in general, is if you've got a great handle on spreadsheets, you are already almost hired. And for networking, try to have a little bit of a sense of humor about what's going on. Like, we all really love what we do. If you can try to show a little bit of humility and not take yourself too seriously, you're going to fit right in with all of us.
Perfect. Thank you guys so much. Let's give like a virtual round of applause, everyone, to our panelists. They did an amazing job, give us so many gems. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you guys for joining us today for festivals and more festivals, and we'll catch you in our next session. Bye, guys. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
I'm alone, so gone. You're under my skin. I'm losing it. No, I'm through.